Guys, the topic of this video is females and should they push weight alone in the gym. Now, one of the main things that we need to talk about before we even go into the depths of what the content of the video is going to be all about is testosterone, because ultimately, one of the key drivers for anybody being able to get strong is optimal testosterone levels. And women have got a very, very small percentage of the testosterone levels that men have. So if they watch guys in the gym all the time, pushing PBs and trying to get stronger all the time, they're going to be a little bit disappointed when they kind of normally hit a plateau. So if you're a female and you're hitting a plateau in your strength training, and if it's strength training that you're trying to do, then great. But the market that I work with are not trying to just get stronger. So I want to just settle your nerves a little bit, ladies, by allowing you not to have to feel like strength alone is the number one thing you should push. So there are other ways in which a muscle will grow, and this really needs to take factor into your program design. And one of the things about a female not having as much muscle tissue is you need to do a lot more metabolic style training. So some of the training sessions with short rest periods, you need to do different types of training styles that create different levels of stress on the muscle that isn't just progressively overloading a muscle every single time, because like I said, you'll hit a plateau. So there's different things to think about. Within a training program for a female, what I generally look at is some level of exercise at the beginning of a workout which activates a muscle or trains a muscle, and it's kind of short range. So if we're looking at the hamstrings, fully contracted. If we're looking at the shoulders, maybe some fully contracted work for the lateral delts. But because some of those exercises are going to limit themselves with strength, it really pays to add on some level of intensification to some of the exercises. So a muscle will grow because of damage. And damage can be caused by adding in things like drop sets. It can be damaged by creating some level of rest pause, which is extending the amount of work you can do in a set. You can grow a muscle by slowing down an eccentric movement and having somebody create some level of concentric, i.e. the lifting movement. So lowering the weight very, very slowly and having somebody help you with the weight up concentrically will create some level of damage in the eccentric portion, the lowering portion of a lift. The other way by which a muscle will grow is cell expansion, so what we call cell swelling. So you ever get to the point where, you know, you're burning, you're really burning, the repetitions are really, really high. Smaller muscle groups within a female respond a lot better to lactic acid and driving nutrients into the cells, such as carbohydrates, etc., and creating some level of pump. Now, when you get the cells expanding, that creates a mechanism within the body which increases the muscle's ability to develop and grow. So pushing strength training alone is kind of a very small piece of the puzzle for strength training. And as I said, a woman does not have the amount of muscle tissue that allows her, and testosterone levels, to keep gaining muscle over time. So the ideal thought process for me within a training session for a female is always try and have something that you're trying to get a little bit stronger at. And normally that's a bigger exercise, whether or not it's some kind of row, whether or not it's some kind of squat variation, but there will become a point where that kind of plateaus. That point where it plateaus, you can either move it to later on in the session and add that as kind of a higher rep training exercise, which you can then focus on slightly more volume, so you can do a little bit more blood flow. Use that exercise specifically not just to get stronger, but use it to try and expand the cells a lot more. Other methodologies to think about from a female perspective later on into the workout is to try and increase the density of your training session. So your goal is never to continually build. What you're also trying to do as a female is allow some level of output in your training session to account for some level of food you're having to maintain a level of body composition. And women can't generally stay in shape just by doing an hour of straight weight training session with just one set after the other with 60-second rest. It's very, very favorable for a female to do things like supersets, trisets, giant sets, maybe when you're dieting a little bit more because they're a lot more stressful on the adrenal system. But what you should really be looking at is, say, a superset or a triset where you're doing 2 exercises back to back, or 3 exercises in a tricep where you're going 1 10-second rest, next one 10-second rest, next one, and then taking 60 to 90 seconds. Women can recover from training a heck of a lot more than males can during a training session. So there will always be lifts that you can kind of progress, but there will always be a point where, because you're not adding the sort of amount of muscle mass that a guy is, you just got to think of it like this. If I go from 80 to 85 kilos over a period of time, and I add 10 pounds, and I add very minimal amounts of muscle tissue, the likelihood of me adding 3 or 4 pounds of that as muscle tissue, as actual usable tissue, that can get strong, is very, very high. Now, over time, if it takes you 6 months to add a pound of muscle, then you're not gaining as much muscle tissue as I am, therefore your ability to get stronger with that new muscle tissue is going to take a lot more time. So one of the factors of getting a lot stronger is the fact that your weight is increasing and you are building more muscle tissue. If you're failing to build muscle tissue, ladies, you're not going to be able to get stronger past the first year or 2 years of training. So if you do want to gain strength, make sure you're increasing muscle tissue. If you want to maintain the shape that you've got, look at creating a little bit more volume by some of the techniques that I've put to you, and don't necessarily feel that you've always got to chase weight alone.